Hello, everybody. All right. We are getting everybody into the meeting here. Give me just 1 second to get everybody admitted. In the meantime, feel free to pop a hello in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're from, and if you feel like it, uh, tell us what your secret talent is. Let's make it a little bit interesting here. If you are in a place where you can get on camera, I would love that. I love to see everybody's smiling faces. Um, so it's always better to have an interactive crowd here, in my opinion. It looks like we've got some people still coming in. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody for the moment here. Um, like I said, please do feel free to tell us who you are, where you're from. I think most of you know me. I'm Sabrina. I'm from Denver. We've got Marina Hoffman. I'm so happy we're able to make it to the call. Marina from Denver. Marina is amazing. She is really good at working in the midterm rental space. So if you are looking for help with midterm rentals, Marina is definitely your girl for that. She works here in the Denver area. We've got, let's see, who else do we have? We have Hugh from Castle Rock. Welcome. Welcome. I've just let a few more people in here. We've got Mike from Rhode Island, but you have a property in Denver. Excellent. Very nice. All right. So it looks like everyone's still coming on here. Once again, if you're just getting on, please do feel free to turn on your turn on your cameras. It's always more fun to see everybody's smiling faces. I hope that we can have an interactive conversation today. We've got Sarah calling in from Chicago with a property in Southern Indiana. I love all of the remote hosts we have online because we can definitely answer these questions for everybody. All right, so it looks like I'm just looking here who we've got, and I think we've got almost the entries are slowing down here. So I will go ahead and get started. All right, so most of you guys know me in some way or another. That's the reason that you were decided to come to this call. You might know me from an Airbnb webinar of some kind. You may know me from the Mile High Hosts. You might know me from my days in property management. I just wanted to take a quick moment before we get started here to introduce myself or reintroduce myself a little bit. Here we are. Give me just 1 second here to get that. I wanted to share my screen with you guys. Give me just 1 second to get that going. All right. So we've got the screen share here. All right, can everybody see my screen? So I just wanted to share a little bit about myself. My name is Sabrina, as you guys know. I'm from Denver. Family first for me. My family is my life. I'm married. I have one 11-year-old daughter. She is my one and only, and she is my whole world. As a family, we love to travel. We love doing outdoor things. This middle picture here, this is a recent picture in Crescent Butte. We're a big ski family, so we like to ski. I actually snowboard. My husband and daughter ski, so that makes it interesting. Um, my This picture includes my 78-year-old father-in-law who had it on his bucket list to ski with our daughter for his last time skiing. He hadn't skied in like 20 years, decided to come out and went skiing with us, and he did great. So I'm really proud of him. We like to be outdoors and do all kinds of fun things. Um, Professionally, I've been in the Airbnb industry since 2015. I'm the founder of B&B Excellent, and I always tell people that I am a complete real estate nerd. I've been in the real estate industry in many forms, mostly in I started out in the investment banking and the investment side of things. I've been in the real estate industry since I graduated way back in 2000. So I'm a total real estate nerd. I also serve as the vice president of Denver's Short-Term Rental Association. And many of you know me from property management. Here we've got a couple of more people coming in here. Um, I have, I was long in the property management business, in the co-hosting business. At one point in time, I was hosting up to 40 short-term rentals, 40 Airbnbs, me, myself, and I, a dedicated cleaning team, and a dedicated quality control person. And so from hosting those 40 properties, all on my own, I learned a few things. One of the things that I saw consistently was that you can absolutely outperform the market. The properties that I was working with, I had a heavy focus on using data-driven inputs, and we were consistently outperforming the market. My clients still consistently outperform the market. The second is that hosting, although it's not a passive thing, it can be really easy. Hosting 40 properties on my own, I developed systems, I streamlined, I automated, and I could do it all on my own, 40 properties, no problem. It was easy. And on top of that, it was 95% four or five-star reviews. So, not only can you automate and streamline hosting, but doing these things actually enhances your hospitality and it helps you get better reviews. And then the last thing I learned is sort of a combination of these two things. Nobody really cares about the performance of the property in the way that you do. You can absolutely outperform the market if you are paying attention. And because hosting can be made so easy with all of these systems and processes, there are a lot of people who don't actually need a property manager. And so, what I am focusing on and spending my time doing these days is really teaching and helping people how to max out their bookings without having to pay for a property manager. I'm not selling anything today. Like I said, I really want this to be an open Q&A. I want this to be informative. I want this to be helpful to you guys. One thing I am offering to you is I am offering a free strategy session. So if you would like to um, sign up for a free strategy session, let me know. I'm going to go ahead and just pop that link into the chat. It's one-on-one, and so I will, oops, that's not where I want it to go here. I will answer all of your questions for you. Give me just one second here, fumbling around with Zoom, and we'll get started in answering your questions. Regarding answering questions, um, the one thing that I wanted to do was um, I wanted to do it in a manner where everybody gets value out of it. So if you are able to use the raise your hand feature, I think that will be the best way to go. Um, so at the bottom of your screen, there should be a little button that looks like a heart. It says react. You might have to click on the three dots to see more. And once you see the more button, then you can get to the react and then you can choose your reaction to raise your hand. And if for some reason you are having trouble, getting to that raise your hand feature, don't worry about it. We can just take people off of mute, and you can ask your questions out loud. So, um, I put that meeting invite in the chat. So once again, if anybody wants a free strategy session with me, you're more than welcome to sign up for that. And let's get started. Let me answer your questions for you. All right. So we have a shy group here. Does anybody want to come off of mute to ask any questions?
Hey
Ah,
Sabrina, can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Okay. Did you get my email about the Airbnb tax breakdown?
Yes, yes. And I didn't have a chance to look at your email in full detail, but I saw, so just to give everybody a little bit of background, one of the things that makes Airbnb so easy is that in a lot of areas, Airbnb will collect and remit the lodging taxes for you. So depending on where you're located, it might be called lodging tax, it might be called transient tax, it might be called occupancy or sales tax. And depending on where you're located, Airbnb oftentimes will collect and remit that tax for you. Within the Airbnb platform, they give you a breakdown of the taxes they are collecting and remitting percentage wise. And the question that I received was that um, they were having a hard time breaking down. And I'm sorry, who asked the question again?
I did, Jerry.
Jerry, yes. Okay, there you are, Jerry. I was having a hard time finding you on the screen. Um,
Yeah, I apologize. I'm using two screens and then my laptop is throwing me off from my desktop.
oh yeah, no worries. So one of the questions that Jerry asked was he was having a hard time tying out the numbers that Airbnb was collecting compared to what he thought um, what he understood the tax percentages to be. And so, Jerry, quick answer to your question. I saw that you had accounted for the 10.75% lodging tax for Denver, but in addition to that, and I think this is why it doesn't work out, the math doesn't work out for you. There is also a Colorado tax. And I don't remember off the top of my head what there's a Colorado tax, and then there's one more tax, but that tax adds another, almost between 3 and 4%. So really the amount of taxes that are being collected is closer to 15% if you're located in Denver. So I hope that answers your question for you. And then I see Sarah asked if she could put questions into the chat. Yes, do feel free to put questions into the chat if you're not in a place where you can ask questions out loud.
So the tax is different for each city in Colorado?
Yes. So taxes are for Airbnb are different city by city and county by county. So it really depends on where you're located, how that works. And it depends on where you're located with whether or not Airbnb will collect and remit the taxes for you. And so one thing to keep in mind is that your lodging taxes, this is something that I see people often confuse, is your lodging tax is collected from the guest and then it's remitted. It should be remitted to your city or county. This is different than your income tax. So you'll pay income taxes on the money that you earn through your Airbnb. However, you will, which is separate from the lodging tax that you pay. So what else do we have? And if we don't have questions, I can start talking because, like I said, I have so much information to share and I love to share it. All right, Marina,
Hey,
why
so
don't you take yourself off of mute?
can you hear me all right?
I can, yeah.
Great. So a question that I often get in the Denver market is what's the difference between short-term and midterm by definition? And I think that there's a lot of material online that can be a bit confusing in regards to how many days or nights create that differential. So can you maybe go into that a little bit? Like,
Yeah. I think that's a great question, Marina. So this is something that it does often get confused because we use the term Airbnb. People think of that as, sometimes they think of that as short-term rentals. Sometimes they think about that as any property listed on Airbnb. And then we have this new midterm rentals that has sort of evolved, I think, probably more in the last, 5 to 6 years or so. So officially, um, the way that most, the way that most governments look at it, the way that, you might look at it for your taxes and things like that, is short-term rental is typically anything that's rented for less than 29 or 30 days consecutively. And I say 29 or 30 days because it depends on your jurisdiction. Here in Denver, it's actually 29 days. So you can rent your home out in Denver for 29 days or more consecutively, and it's not considered a short-term rental. In other places, sometimes it's 30 days or more, and it's not considered a short-term rental. A midterm rental is anything that's rented for 30 days or more consecutively at a time, but not necessarily your traditional long-term 12-month lease that's unfurnished. A midterm property is typically furnished in some way, or typically fully furnished, I should say. And it's typically, the average, and Marina, you can pop in here to let me know what you see. The average midterm rental period that I've seen over the course of time tends to be around 45 days, but really anything less than 6 months is sort of like the loose term for midterm rentals.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely seeing a lot of 1 month, 3 month, and 6 month options right now.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. All right, so we've got a question in the chat, a couple of questions in the chat. So Hugh is asking, do you really need a national platform hosting to be the most successful? Um, I'm wondering if you can clarify your question a little bit, Hugh. Are you asking if you need like a platform that advertises nationally? Or are you looking for like local I guess I'm a little bit, um, and how do you best present that to the?
Okay,
Okay.
it's like we use Evolve because
Uh-huh.
they cost the least. We still have to come up with our management and cleaning and laundry people.
Yeah, yeah.
But we had a local people for like 3 years before, and we've like doubled it since we went to Evolve. So I don't
You've
know if
dou-
that's just
you've
the
you've
doubled our
doubled
income.
doubled your income since you went to Evolve. So that's good. So Evolve is very effective. So is a local, if you have a local property manager, they can also be very effective. The thing that I always tell people about, using a property manager and the performance of your property, the statistics is that the more boutique a property manager is, the higher their reviews tend to be. And the more, like I said, the thing that I've learned, like using Evolve, you are handling like some of the on the ground stuff, like coordinating your cleaners, doing the guest communications after the booking is made, things like that. Nobody cares about your property like you do. Um, so what if you are hiring someone to help you out? Uh, number one, you want to make sure they have good systems and operations to make sure that you get great reviews with hosting. But number two, and probably, I would say equally important is you want to make sure that whoever is helping you is being strategic and using data-driven market data to price your property. You want to ask them how they're evaluating the market, how they're pricing your property. Are they using dynamic pricing? And the thing that, and the reason a lot of people, I always say that, people do better if they're doing this on their own. And I want to be careful how I say this because I want to let everybody know, like, there is a time and a place to use a property manager, and many property managers do a good job at this. But most property managers are looking at the performance of their portfolio on a whole. So they're saying, if I have 100 properties, on average, we're beating the market by X amount. However, if you're looking at the portfolio on a whole, there's always some properties that are not beating the market, and there's, a couple of properties that are way outperforming the market. Um, and so when you're looking at your property on your own, or if you're working with a property manager, you want someone who is going to evaluate the performance of your property on an individual basis. And they're going to be using dynamic pricing and different listing optimization strategies on an individual basis. That is how you get the most value and the highest potential income out of your property, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question, Hugh? Or did you have any feedback on that?
Well, my question is dynamic pricing.
Mhm.
So, we've switched to that because that's how this, our hosting, uses.
Yeah.
And we find it very accurate. But am I hearing that you can, like subscribe or buy or do an app for dynamic pricing without having to go through, one of these national based platforms?
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yes. Yeah. So, I have a couple of softwares that I truly love and that I use, and that I always recommend to my clients. Number one, I use a pricing tool called Price Labs. That I think every single person who is self-managing their own property should be using Price Labs. It costs $20 a month, so it's completely cost effective. Um, and then number two, the software that I use, and you don't necessarily need this software until you have a couple of properties on hand. I use a software called Hospitable, and that is one of the things that helps to automate and streamline the hosting process so that, it's more hands off for you as the host. Now, the most important thing I always tell people is yes, a pricing tool is really important. A pricing tool is very, very smart in that it can see what's happening in the broader market. It can predict when demand is increasing. It can predict when demand is decreasing much better than any human being can do so, because it just has so much more information than we do. But the thing that any pricing tool doesn't do better than a human being is they don't know your really like your hyper local market in the way that you do. And they don't know how your property compares to other properties. They are evaluating the things that they can gather from data points. They're gathering, two bedrooms versus other two bedrooms. They're gathering people with hot tubs that against people that don't have hot tubs. And they may or may not be taking into account a lot of this intrinsic value that you add. They also don't know how well you market your property compared to other properties. So there can be, a 4 bedroom, 5 bath property right next to another 4 bedroom, 5 bath property. And one property is marketed spectacularly and one isn't. And the one that's marketed better, Price Labs is going to price both of those properties the same. But the truth is, the one that is marketed better and that is showing up higher in the search results on Airbnb and Vrbo, that property is going to earn a lot more money and you're able to charge a lot more. So, to summarize all of that, yeah, there are tools that are totally accessible to the individual host to make dynamic pricing easy, but it does depend on some of your own knowledge in order to get the most value out of those tools. And the truth is, nobody knows your property better than you do. So you can make that tool more effective than anybody else. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
All right, great. That was a very good question. So I've got a couple of more questions in the chat here. Um, Nicole says, do you recommend having guests sign some sort of lease outside of the Airbnb platform if they are staying for longer than 29 days? I think it is a lot of people don't do it, but it is something that it's a good protection for you. There are definitely ways to do that very easily and to have some sort of a very, very simple lease signed. If you are renting your property for more than 30 days. Now, what I can tell you is there's a couple of misconceptions about short-term rentals. A lot of people think that, you know, after a certain amount of time, people get tenant rights in the property. And I can tell you that very much depends on your location and your jurisdiction. So if you have um, someone who comes in and they come in for a short-term stay, but for whatever reason, they do not leave that property or they do not want to leave the property. And I don't want to scare people because this is something that happens like very, very, very far and few between. I've been doing this for 10 years myself. I've worked with so many clients and we have actually never, ever had anyone overstay. Um, but if for some reason you have someone who overstays the property, even if they were on a short-term stay, depending on where you're located, that automatically becomes a civil case. It's not trespassing because you invited them onto the property. So a lot of times, if you do call the police will say, you know, that this is not considered trespassing. This is considered a civil case. You do need to file an eviction. And so if you have to file an eviction, then if that has to go to court, it is a lot easier for a judge to see like some sort of a written agreement beyond just an Airbnb reservation to say, oh, well, this is pretty straightforward. You were supposed to leave, you know, on March 30th, and here you are on April 30th, you're still here. We will evict. Um, so having that documentation certainly makes it much easier if you ever land in a court of law. With that said, I can tell you that almost very few people who are renting out their property on a short-term basis are using any sort of a contract. I don't use any sort of an outside contract for any short-term stays. In fact, I actually don't use any sort of a contract for my 30-day or more stays either. And Marina, I would be interested to get your take on this as well, and how you do it a little bit differently than I do. So I'd love for you to chime in a little bit. But if you are using I can tell you like the safest way to do it is to have some sort of very simple agreement signed, and you just need to disclose that within your listing, that someone will be required to sign a simple agreement. You need to make sure you put that verbiage into your listing that is required by Airbnb and by Verbo. And as long as people know ahead of time that they'll be doing that, it's no problem to do that. And there are third-party software out there that can make that a little bit easier as well. And so, Marina, if you're in a place where you can hop off, I would love to get your take because Marina is really, she's the gal for midterm rentals.
Thanks, Sabrina. I would definitely push on getting a traditional lease signed for anything that's more of a midterm. Me personally, I typically grab those clients regardless off of Airbnb. So there's much more of an open communication about how to progress into a traditional lease. If they're coming through Airbnb, I do not do an auxiliary lease, but one that's I've just never really seen the true benefit, and maybe based on this conversation, I'll change that. But for the most part, though, it's usually off Airbnb, and I just do a traditional lease through like Furnished Finder or sourcing on Zillow, things like that.
Thank you, Marina. Yeah, so it is just people on Airbnb aren't typically used to doing the lease. It's just not a typical part of the process. If it does make anybody feel a little bit better, you know, Airbnb has a lot of background um, data screening that they do. Now, Airbnb is not doing like a background check on people before they join the platform. However, everybody who's on the platform does have a verified government ID. And Airbnb has been doing this since 2008. So they've gotten really good at really understanding what risky guest behavior looks like. And so a lot of times they are able to prevent risky bookings before they begin. They never even come to you in the request. A couple of things you can do to screen 30-day or more rentals through Airbnb is number one. Hi, Ashton. It's good to see you. Through 30-day rentals through Airbnb is you can keep your instant book off. I always ask the very simple question, tell me more about your visit and why you're coming. Most people volunteer that information anyway. And then, also carefully read through reviews. I don't always just depend on the star rating when I'm reading through guest reviews. I always click into their profile and I go through and there are people who have 5-star reviews who have like 29 5-star reviews, but then you read through and you hear that maybe they were a more difficult guest, or one person had a really terrible experience with them, things like that. And so that's a good way to screen people a little bit, um, and to give yourself a little bit of peace of mind, when deciding whether or not to host certain guests. But keeping that instant book off, I think, is good for 30-day rentals for a couple of reasons. Number one, you get that screening ability in some way to have a conversation and sort of test it out a little bit. And number two, um, you can be strategic about the way you're lining up your bookings so that you can line up the 30 days as closely together as possible. Because the vacancy is really what kills the revenue on a 30-day rental when you're regulated to that. All right, we've got people hopping in and out. What other questions do we have? And for those of you who have just joined, feel free to pop your questions into the chat. Feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to come off of mute. It looks like we've got a great group here, so we're having a great open conversation with things and answering all the questions that you may have. Also, for those that have just popped on, I'll share in the chat. This is a nice open Q&A. I'm not selling anything today. I am offering one strategic call with me, one complimentary strategic call. I will say that, uh, if you are renting your place out for 30 days or more, the strategic call might not be the best fit for you. There's certainly value that I can add and I can help you out in that. But, I can really add the most value with those that are renting out more on a shorter term basis. All right, any other questions?
So just, here.
Yeah.
So starting out as a brand new Airbnb,
Mhm.
I kind of have no idea how to get started. Do you just go to Airbnb or the other sites that are available? People have told me there's like nursing doctor
Yeah.
sites you can go to. Do you do all that or just Airbnb?
Yeah, so tell me,
Like,
tell me a little bit more. I would love to hear a little bit more about your property and your goals, and that will help me guide you, the best place to start.
so I have one in Niwot that's got a beautiful mountain scenery
Hmm.
and in Colorado, and it's highly furnished. It's a high-end
Uh-huh.
condo.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it'd be more money to do an Airbnb versus renting it out.
Hmm.
And it does come with a single car garage with it too.
Great. And are you able to do that short term?
Yes,
You
we
are.
are.
Okay,
hmm
perfect, perfect.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
HOA has no restrictions on it,
that's
thankfully.
awesome. Yeah, yeah. I always like to double check that, especially when someone says condo, because a lot of the HOAs do have certain restrictions. And so you haven't gotten online or anything yet.
No,
All right. Okay.
no.
So I think the best place to start is Airbnb. And Airbnb is the most popular, depending on which platforms you need to be on, it really does depend on your location and your area. Everything really is market driven. So knowing your market is very important. But I can tell you that in most metro areas, along the Front Range, that Airbnb is the most used platform. How many bedrooms is your property?
It's two,
Two
two
bedrooms,
and
yeah.
2.5 baths.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah. So, unless you have like a larger property that's sleeping, anywhere from 8 to 10 people or even 6 people, the Airbnb platform is probably the only platform that you need. Um, and getting really good at that Airbnb platform first, I would say it should be your first goal with this property before expanding out to other platforms. If you get really good at the Airbnb platform, you probably won't need to expand and you can keep things really simple and streamlined for yourself. But I would start out by listing on Airbnb. And what I'll do, Terry, is after this call, I'll shoot you a quick email um, with my Superhost, Ask a Superhost ambassador link, and I can help you get listed online. Yeah. What other questions do we have? And once again, feel free to pop those into the chat. If we don't have questions, I will start talking. I don't know if you
I
guys
have a
want to
question.
do that. Yeah, hey, Ashton.
How are you? Um,
Good.
Obviously there's been a lot kind of regulation wise, at least in Denver,
Mhm.
and kind of surrounding areas. Obviously each municipality has their own, own stuff that they do. But just curious, in particularly Denver or even surrounding areas, have you heard of any changes that are coming, or like has anything more recent happened than I know a couple years ago? Like the big thing was like, has to be your primary residence, in Denver and all that kind of stuff. Has
Yeah,
has
yeah.
has anything like changed
Yeah,
with
I mean,
that or anything?
there are a couple of areas that are are good and sort of very interestingly to me, like unincorporated Boulder County has opened up their regulations a little bit. So a lot of, unincorporated Boulder County, we're talking like, Netherland, Rollins, places like that. Ward are great. It's a great, the regulations are friendly there. Um, Westminster and Arvada are both very friendly to short-term rental. Um, Wheat Ridge is also friendly to investor-based short-term rentals. Um, they do have a limit on the numbers, so you do have to double check their website to see what licenses they have available in the different areas of Wheat Ridge. And then down south in Colorado, like Teller County, Parker County, Park County, not Parker. Um, we're seeing a lot of people being active there as well. So it's definitely, Colorado is still doable. Other places are, there's a lot of other places in the country that are great as well. But yeah, there is some doable places in Colorado.
Hi, I have a different question, and I'm sorry, perhaps you already covered this. I was a little bit late to join.
Sure. Yeah.
Ivana, and we are starting an Airbnb in the Delaware Shore, and we're starting to think about furniture and how to decorate it. And I was wondering if you have any sort of like, do's and don'ts. For instance,
Yeah.
someone told me, "Oh, you need to have a king bed in the primary bedroom because that's something that people value." So, anyways, if you have any um, do's and don'ts or best practices, that would be great.
Yeah, yeah, definitely I do. And the first thing I would, and you're in a great place to get started here, because you haven't furnished your property or you're sort of just, getting all of that done. But the first thing that I would do, and it's the step that a lot of people forget, is to get to understand your market. And what I mean by that is understand who the visitors in your market are, understand why they're coming to your area, because that sort of thing is, and understand sort of the best, your layout of your home and the best use of that, because that sort of thing can influence the way that you furnish your property and how you furnish the bedrooms, whether or not you're using, bunk beds in one of the bedrooms. If you find that the tourists in your area are, mainly families, if you've got mainly couples, it's a different story. Regarding the question about king beds are highly desirable. Airbnb, I don't know if they've done it already, but they have it on their list to have people be able to filter for king beds. There are people who will specifically choose a place if they have a king bed. So if you have a room, I tell everyone, if you have a room that is large enough for a king bed, put a king bed in there, because that does help to get a little, it just helps your property stand up and above and beyond other properties out there. But Ivana, I would say, we can definitely take a deep dive into your property a little bit more, and the best way to go and what to, where to go with things. I just popped my link into the chat. I'm offering a free strategy session, so feel free to sign up for that, and we can deep dive into this stuff for you a little bit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, what else do we have? And once again, feel free to pop off of mute, put your questions into the chat. All right, so it looks like we've got a lot of people who are just hoping to listen in here and garner some information. So I'll go ahead, we have about 15 minutes left. I'll go ahead and just share some items that I always find helpful to people. I don't have any slides or anything like that, prepared for you. But, I've been doing short-term rentals for a long time, and there are basically 5 steps to having a successful short-term rental. Number one, it is what we talked about with Ivana. And if you can do this before you even start furnishing your property, it's best is to really get to know your market. And by getting to know your market, getting to know who your traveler is, getting to know who your visitors are, getting to understand the different events in your area and the high and low seasons is all very important. But other aspects of getting to know your market are also, get to know your competition, see what other offerings there are out there, how many other 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom properties are there in your area, and what types of things are they offering. Um, and and once you get to know, how your property compares to others, that really helps you um, market your property in a way that is the most optimal for you. The second thing is to optimize your listing. This is with, different settings directly within the platforms, the way that you market your property, the way that you present your property to others, the way that the algorithm reviews your property. And when I'm talking about the algorithm, I'm talking about the search algorithms on Airbnb and Vrbo. I always tell people your goal in optimizing your listing is to get as high on those search results as often as possible. Because the higher you are in those search results, the more visibility your property has. If you have more visibility with your property, then the more demand you have for your property, and the more demand you have for your property, the more money you can make. And so that is one way to really help you max out your potential with your property. The third thing is to be a great host. Um, Being a great host has not only a lot of intrinsic value that always seems to shine through in people's revenue numbers. But being a great host also really helps you rank higher in those search results on both Airbnb and Vrbo. And like I said, being a great host can be really easy. You can use systems, you can use automations, and all of these things only enhance hospitality. I've heard people say, well, if I'm using automated messages, it's not going to feel personal and people aren't, they're going to feel like they're talking to a robot, but that's absolutely not the case. Um, we get tons of compliments and tons of great reviews on our communication. And a lot of times I have not spoken to that person individually in any way once. It's all the automated messages. So be a great host, and the way you do that is by automating and streamlining. And then the last thing is use a pricing strategy that maximizes your revenue. So I always recommend dynamic pricing. Airlines, hotels, their prices change daily according to supply and demand. You take that knowledge from knowing your market in order to help that dynamic pricing strategy be the most effective it can be. And then the last and the fifth thing is do all of these four things on repeat. Um, Airbnb, like I said, hosting can be very easy. Um, and especially if you have an on-the-ground team, it can be super easy. But it is not a set it and forget it thing. You don't just put your listing up online, take and wait for the reservations to roll in. That's not how it works. So do all of these things on repeat because the Airbnb algorithm is always changing. The market is always changing. I mean, we've seen so many changes in the market from one, Airbnb first started becoming popular through the pandemic, through now the last couple of years. And so all of these things on repeat, those are the hosts that are the most successful. So share that information with you guys. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? All right. Well, it seems like I think everyone's gotten the information that they need. So we are getting closer to time, so I can give everybody another 10 minutes back in their life. Once again, do feel free to reach out to me. Everybody has, respond to my email. You can use my link to schedule a free strategy session with me, and I am here to help you guys out and help you guys be successful short-term rental hosts. So I'll let everybody have 10 minutes back in their day. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.